Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing well. Today we're going to be doing a bit of art supplies organization slash studio upgrading. You know that I love keeping things organized and maximizing my studio space. This mostly started because of my recent additions of acrylic paint, you know, the heavy body tube kind. For the paint themselves, I wanted to make some sort of a cool organization for them because there's really not a great pre-made way to organize tubes like that. The closest thing that I've seen is the hack where you can like attach the binder clips to the ends of the tubes and then you can hang them up easily places, but as somebody who spends a lot of their time designing art supply storage, I know I can do better than that. So that was my main goal or challenge for the week, but something that is very much related to the acrylic paint situation and another area of improvement that I want to work on would be the acrylic paint brushes. A lot of the more specific acrylic and like oil paint brushes that I have are long handled and I have them tucked away in a drawer and it's really not practical. In fact, when I went into the drawer the other day to see if I had like a certain brush that I wanted to use, I found an entire bundle of new brushes that I just did not remember I owned. So clearly that needs some work as well so that I can actually see the options that I have to use, which I'm sure will also mean that I will actually use them more, because if I can see what I have, then I will know that it's there to use instead of sticking to the same like 10 brushes that I have on my desk at all times. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into this art supplies organization. So this is actually something that I designed a couple of months ago and then never really went through with using it. This is actually a paint tube holder though. So this like does perfectly work fine, as you can see, but I essentially mocked it up as a design that could be attached to a wall, hence these screw holes on either side here, and I just wasn't super happy with it. Having to attach each of these bars to a wall was just a lot of measuring and it seemed really permanent. I actually added it to my pegboard wall, and so I have these empty pegboards that I really haven't done anything with, and I thought this design might actually be perfect to reuse for that purpose. Make it that it actually works with the pegboards, and that is how we've ended up with this. Although this has even on its own gone through a few iterations. This is the final version though, which I'm super happy with. So this attaches to my IKEA Scadus boards, hence the hook things here. It fits all of these acrylic tubes really, really well. It's kind of hard to show you since it's, you know, opposite of gravity for how I'm holding this, but this just works really, really nicely. You can see all the colors really well because the golden paint tubes that I have the actual paint swatches on them. It also holds, I have a couple of larger ones and those fit in there perfectly as well. But this has gone through quite a few iterations, just getting the measurements all perfect. The hooks, making sure they were nice and strong. I also angled this back piece here so that when it is attached to the pegboard, it will slide up slightly just so when the tubes are on this, they are not in any sort of danger of accidentally sliding off depending on how level your wall is. So yeah, I think these are gonna look awesome with all of the paint tubes on them. It's gonna be like my own little art supplies store, which I would be perfectly fine in looking like my studio was an art supplies store. I also, even though right now for where this is going on my pegboard, it's not gonna be applicable, but the ends will actually butt up perfectly if you have multiple ones. Like this is not the same final version, but for demonstration purposes on a pegboard, if you wanted to put multiple ones together, the holes and everything line up perfectly and it would be a pretty seamless butt in the middle here to be nice and uniform for everything. So I have a few of these printed out, and I also made myself some smaller ones because I have these 22 milliliter tubes of acrylic paint. They're significantly smaller than your more typical 2 fluid ounce tubes, and the neck and everything was a lot smaller, so took the same design concept and made that for these smaller tubes. But yeah, let's start getting all of this paint organized. am pretty obsessed with how this storage turned out. I feel like the organization is pretty self-explanatory, but I have my smaller tubes of Golden Open paint at the top. I have the two sets separated, so the upper one is the traditional set and the other one is, I think it's called the Modern Color Theory set. The modern one, or whatever the second line of paints set was called, came with a 2 milliliter tube of white. So I put that down with the first row of the normal acrylic paint, and then these ones down here, I feel like people might be confused with the color organization, but I put the colors that I probably will use the most because they're like the typical mix palette that I would use, and then my more special specific colors are on the second row, and then the titanium white is just there because it's my one larger tube and it just fits better there. Oh, and beside the Golden Open paints, I have some like slow drying acrylic medium that just happens to be in a larger tube like that, so I printed myself like a single unit thing for that, and it fits really well there. Now that we've got the paint all organized, let's move on to the paint brushes. This is what I currently keep my most used paintbrushes in. These ones are all short-handled, but I knew I wanted to make something along the same lines as this for my long-handled brushes. Something that keeps everything separated and organized while being able to see all of your brush options and easily grab them from the holder. So here's the printed long-handled paintbrush storage. I actually have two variations, which we will get into. This one was the first one, which is what you saw me design. So it has the 2 layers. The front section is angled, so just let me grab a brush. This was the bundle of mystery that I did not remember I owned. But anyway, these front ones are on a slight angle. You will see this better in a minute when I actually put all of my brushes in here. These front ones are angled slightly so that you can see them all a lot easier. It's just how I've designed all of my other brush storage, and I really like the slight angle. It's just a lot easier to see the stuff, so kept that with this one. But then I also added this back section, which the back section is flat. The spaces are also a lot larger, so I figured you'd probably put your larger brushes back there so the visibility isn't as much of an issue. So I designed that. I played around a little bit putting brushes in it just to see if I was happy with it, because I knew I probably was going to need to print another one, and so if there were any adjustments that needed to be made, that was the time to check. And so between this and this, I did actually make a few adjustments. The main one is that long-handled paintbrushes do not fit as unusually as short-handled ones. They are much more uniform in handle size. Like, give me a second. Here's a bunch that are literally the same type of brush in different sizes. So in the handle part here, because obviously when they are in this, it doesn't go up too much to the point where it starts to fan out or just expand for gripping. This thing is tall enough that they're secure in here, but it's not unnecessarily tall, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So where the storage hits on these is about here, so it means that the part that's actually in the storage unit is all about the same size, or at least has far less of a size range than short-handled brushes. You can probably tell between this size brush and this size brush quite a big difference in brush size, but when you look at the handle here to here, it's not that much of a size difference compared to a short handle brush. You can see, like, between this one and this one, look at the handle size difference between them. A lot crazier compared to the long handle brushes. And also in general, long handled paintbrushes just tend to be a skinnier handle, and so these 3 sections that I put over here for larger brushes honestly felt unnecessary. So on this one, I split all of the bottom sections to be even. There you can see the differences between the two. But one of the biggest issues that I have with other brush and pen organizers and stuff is when they just scoot all over the place because there's like too much space, and so needed to split that just for my own sanity. So that was the main change, but the second thing that I did, it was more of a cosmetic thing. The top points I originally angled, it's very subtle, but you probably can see the print lines, how it steps like that, and I just felt it was a bit messy because it's not a very steep angle compared to other brush storage that I've designed, so I straightened them out so that the edges are nice and flat and clean. The angle is still there though, it's just masked by the flat top. So those are my 2 storage units. Hopefully these will deal with my entire long-handled paintbrush collection, but I guess we'll find out. This, I believe, is the extent of my long-handled paintbrush collection. We've got some ones that I've had forever in this container, that bundle that I forgot about, some random loose ones. There are these packages of ones that I know I've used them, but I just put them back because that was like the best option for storing them that I had at the time. These ones I took out of another container. They're brand new. And then I have some other miscellaneous like oil painty type of brushes in that container. So time to get all of these organized. And here's what the brush organizers look like. So I kind of went with a synthetic side and a more like natural side. Originally I was going for like more oil paintbrushes and acrylic paintbrushes, and it just sort of worked out like that. These aren't even close to full, so it's awesome. I have lots of room to grow. But because I had lots of room, I decided to put in some short handle brushes that I do use for acrylic painting. So it's a bit tall for them, but it still works out fine. Like even the smallest of these brushes you can still grab super easily out of the container. And then beyond there being like an oil and acrylic side, they're all kind of organized by shape and also brand. So I kept the ones that were the same brand like on the edge here, and then I went by size, like smallest at the front, largest at the back. Kind of did that with all of these. Obviously I can reorganize these in the future if I find that the organization is confusing for me, or just I think of a better way to do it. I also plopped in these like more traditional like calligraphy brushes. I don't even know what you would call these, but they were ones that I also had just laying around where I grabbed a bunch of these from, and again, there was room, so I figured why not plop them in there for now. Yeah, I'm really happy with how these turned out. I think you can, well, this one doesn't really count because I have some short handle ones in the back here, but overall you can see the height difference between the long handle ones and between the front row and the back row. That one you probably can see it better. There you have the various levels of long handle heights. I'm really happy with how this turned out, and it seems to be working great for its organization needs. I'm probably gonna throw this organizer up in the shop because I know I've gotten a lot of comments over time about doing something for long handled paintbrushes, and it's just not something that I'd ever needed for myself, and so I hadn't really looked into it, but now I do, and here it is. So if you're someone that's been asking about long-handled paintbrush storage, the link to this will be in the description box. Now that I've got all of my acrylic paint tubes and brushes all nicely organized, I'm ready to have a painting marathon. So that is going to be where I end this video. Thank you for joining me on my art supplies reorganization shenanigans, and I will see you in my next one.